topic was, I want to thank Moira Gorski for suggesting it, and I realized how many millions of women are actually being affected by hormonal changes. And so we want to share with you a little bit about what we've learned about this that may be helpful. Starting with, I suppose a definition would be good, is that menopause is a natural biological event, and it signals the end of childbearing years. And several years prior to menopause is when the transition begins, as the ovaries begin to retire a bit, so they produce less of the reproductive hormones, estrogen and progesterone. And the function of the ovaries then gradually declines, so the release of eggs or ovas that the ovary normally is in charge of, that starts to decline. And then in turn, that brings an end to monthly cycles. And I might mention, while we're talking about that, you do have two ovaries, and they take turns each month. So that's why sometimes when you start having hormonal shifts, you'll get a cycle one month and then nothing the next month, and then you'll get one another month. I always think like one ovary is retiring sooner than the other. I don't know. And there are classic symptoms of for menopause. In fact, I had a list that had about 25 listed on it, and Steve said, I think that's overwhelming. And I felt like saying, yes, menopause can be overwhelming.
Exactly.
But we have boiled it down to 6 of the key ones, because this is all that we'd have time for tonight, but also because we have some really good good answers for how you can have I misspelled sweats. Oh, that was just a typo. I'll fix that later. And so we're going to tell you about how you can address these from a natural perspective. So did Steve arrive yet?
I don't
okay. Tell me what he does, and then I'll just do these in the meantime. So so why are there so many shifts that take place? Maybe I should go through them a little bit, so I went through that kind of fast. But there's hot flashes and night sweats. There's mood swings and head stuff, anxiety, depression, irritabilities, all that kind of stuff. And then difficulty sleeping. And difficulty sleeping is no small thing. When people don't get deep, normal, regular sleep, it affects anxiety and depression and focus and concentration and all. You are just off balance.
Your disposition.
Disposition, that's right. And then weight gain, which is one of the cheerier parts of this. Fatigue is common also, and then you can start having like memory issues and concentration issues, and so you can see why people get a little uncomfortable about and fearful, I think, even about menopause. And I just want to say something here, because when I started doing research for this session, there was a lot of stuff that I came across that was all kind of like, oh, what a terrible time, and how awful the symptoms are, and so on. And I want to tell you that, there's a physiological definition of menopause, but you know what? There's also philosophical ones. And I have to say, if I were to share my story, was that I was fortunate enough to get introduced to Shaklee and Shaklee products long before I went into menopause, and not realizing, not even having a clue that what I was doing with those vitamins, those supplements, my diet on a day-to-day basis was slowly and steadily repairing, rebuilding the cells of my body and maintaining the cells of all the glands and all the organs. And that was just that. So when it came time for menopause, it was a non-event. I just breezed right through it, never had a hot flash, never had symptoms. And so that's why I want to share with you, some of the things that we've learned, so that would be a wonderful thing for everybody to be able to experience. And menopause, I just want to say, is probably the time in your life when you will have the most freedom ever. And so, Suzanne?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, there you are.
Okay. We had a
Okay.
heck of a time getting on.
Yes, I saw that. Okay, good. So you're good now. All right. Okay. And so so anyway, so I just wanted to say that it's a wonderful time to look forward to. It's a time when there's it's a wonderful stage of a woman's life. So I just wanted to mention that. Is Steve there?
He's trying to get on the phone line.
So he can't. Oh, so he still hasn't come on. Okay, Joe, can you keep an eye out for that?
Hmm.
So I'll just take his slides in the meantime, Suzanne, but let me know when he shows up then.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the question is, why do so many changes happen during menopause? And um, you see, as the glands that produce hormones begin to decline in their function, uh, the hormone levels start to shift, and it causes a chain reaction of effects in the body chemistry of a woman, and that's because estrogen and progesterone, but especially estrogen, is involved in hundreds of bodily processes. So you've got estrogen receptors all over the place, including estrogen affects normal body temperature, normal sleep patterns, and mood and sense of well-being. So it affects, you've got a lot of estrogen receptors in your brain. Suzanne, anything you want to add to that slide?
No,
Okay,
but
good.
I can say to you that I didn't have. I heard you say when we were coming, trying to get on, that
Mm-hmm.
you didn't have any hot flashes and all that stuff. Neither did I. So I
Mm.
wasn't taking menopause balancing complex because I didn't have it, but
Exactly.
all the
Well,
other
and
stuff worked.
yeah, exactly right. So just to give you an idea of some of the ways that estrogen affects the body is it affects the brain, maintaining body temperature. We mentioned that also memory,
Oh, we
focus,
lost you,
emotions.
Barb.
Oh, uh-oh. Am I back yet?
I
Yeah,
can hear.
Am I there? Can you hear me
me.
okay?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Boy, we're having technical problems on this line tonight. Um, and, and estrogen signals the breast to develop at puberty and prepares the glands for milk production when you have a child. Um, the heart and liver are affected by estrogen. That helps, it has an effect on cholesterol and decreasing the buildup of plaque in coronary arteries. Ovary produces estrogen, which stimulates the maturation of eggs and stimulates the start of cycles. In the uterus, estrogen helps prepare the lining to nourish a fetus. In the vaginal area, estrogen helps maintain and lubricate the lining. So, and it affects our bones. So it has lots of roles that it plays all throughout the body. And is Steve
Steve's
there
here,
yet?
Barb.
Steve?
Yes, can you hear me?
Ah, there you are. Hello, Professor. Yes, can you see the slide?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
Okay, so hormone replacement therapy has a lot of problems. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But once they decided that hormone replacement therapy wasn't good for women, they started talking about other alternatives. The only one the medical community considered were medicines, things that treated the symptoms, things like antidepressants, blood pressure medicines, seizure drugs. All of these things have significant side effects. So go to the next one. So the interesting thing is that back in, I think it was 2000, it was 2002, 2003,
Yep.
a big study came out. It was actually a meta-analysis of a lot of different studies and really showed for the first time that hormone replacement therapy dramatically increases the risk of breast cancer, heart disease, and a number of other things. So for the very first time, for years, I mean, I think many of the people on this call can think back to the days in which doctors were saying, "Oh, you've got hot flashes. Well, the best thing for it, let's go on hormone replacement therapy," and kind of putting all women who are about that age on hormone replacement therapy. And all of a sudden, they realized after doing that for years that this wasn't a good thing. So the
Well,
recommendation was to stop that. So they went from 81 million prescriptions of hormone replacement therapy from 2001 to 21 million prescriptions in 2003.
in
During
1 year.
during that period of time, um, the incidence of breast cancer decreased dramatically, 8.6%. That's the
80?
single most
Oh,
effective thing that's ever been done to reduce breast cancer risk. Not mammograms, not regular checkups from the doctor, um, not even, well, they never really looked at diet and lifestyle, but, the single most effective medical intervention was to stop doing what they've been doing.
holy cow. Okay. Um, so,
Okay, it's my turn. And so when we were looking at natural alternatives to the drugs and medications that Shakti people don't like to take, uh, eating plants with phytoestrogens in it are very helpful. Phytoestrogens are a chemical compound found in plants. It's plant-like estrogens, and they weakly attach to the estrogen receptors in our bodies. Many cells have estrogen receptors, and they function in a similar manner as the estrogen that one produces themselves, so that this is a way to get some estrogen into the body naturally, safely, and reduces the results of bad side effects of menopause. One of the in menopause balancing complex, one of the key ingredients is black cohosh, and it's been used for many years, way back to the Indians, to help reduce the intensity of menopause problems that we as women experience. And it is a good source of a lot of these phytoestrogens. And one of them in there reduces the luteinizing hormone, which oftentimes is in high levels during menopause, associated with menopause. So reducing that is a good thing. And it, again, has the estrogen-like phytoestrogens that act like estrogen in the body. And they also has components that promote mild relaxation, which is something that's needed during menopause. Okay.
that's right.
Another one is red clover. It's grown throughout the United States. It has blossoms of red. The red clover also contain phytoestrogens. So a lot of these things that are in menopause balancing complex are different phytoestrogens, and they're also found. It's similar to the ones that are found in soy, and so having a combination of these different isoflavones helps get the maximum effect of the estrogen effect in the body. Licorice root, along with the dong quai, has been used for many years as another source of phytoestrogens. Okay, dong quai. This is one that I knew. Dong quai black cohosh was one that I knew about long before Shakti had menopause balancing complex. So I was glad to see that they had both of those in that compound, in that complex. So flaxseed is another source of phytoestrogens called lignans, and it's like the isoflavones themselves from soy. It's similar to the estrogen, in that again it binds to the estrogen receptors. So Shakti's put all these different sources of phytoestrogens into the menopause balancing complex to make sure that some or all of them are going to attach to the estrogen receptors in our cells and make a difference during menopause. And again, dong quai.
Oops, sorry.
That's okay. Well, dong quai is also a uterine tonic, so it helps the lining of the uterus. Okay.
So the isoflavones are also extremely important. One of the things, and particularly if we look at the isoflavones from soy, there's where the evidence is most robust. There was a meta-analysis published a few years ago where they looked at dozens of studies and concluded that when you consume soy protein containing isoflavones, that overall that decreased hot flashes by 30%. Now, it varies from woman to woman. That's an average. For some women, it may be relatively little. For other women, it may give complete elimination of hot flashes. But that's powerful. That's something that's been established something that there's good clinical evidence that actually works.
Very nice. So we wanted to put together kind of a basic starting place for people who are looking at menopause. And we wanted to first establish that the objective is to keep the cells of the ovaries and other glands and organs of the body, for that matter, operating as well as possible for as long as possible. And so in order to do that, we've got to feed the body all the essential nutrients so that those cells that are constantly turning over are making healthier cells all the time. One of the things I heard years ago, and I hope, Professor, this has some degree of accuracy, is that about every 7 years all your cells turn over. And I thought, well, what an encouraging thing that would be, to think that 7 years from now you could be healthier than you are now by building and repairing and replacing your cells with a healthier nutrients. So a good starting place is the Vitalizer. This is the daily strip of 6 tablets that contains 80 different essential nutrients that are just, it's the #1 most popular product that Shaklee makes. And for women who still have a monthly iron loss, Vitalizer comes with iron. There's also a version for men without iron, and then there's a version for people over 50 called Vitalizer Gold. So just a wonderful starting place, a wonderful basic foundation. And then there are the soy products that Steve was just talking about, the energizing soy protein for shakes and in bars, the smoothies. These are wonderful products. They're all non-genetically modified soy. And they're in a wonderful form that are readily absorbed. And then there is this wonderful product that was introduced, I'm going to say about four years ago, Steve, maybe 5, I don't know, called Vivix. And this is a resveratrol product that's made from these another class of antioxidants, polyphenols, and they're just remarkable what they've learned that this resveratrol and these polyphenols do in the body. They inside the cell, they activate things called longevity genes, and they set in motion all kinds of activity to start protecting and repairing cells when they've been under damage, and repairing and rewrapping DNA and reducing inflammation. And so it's really a cellular anti-aging complex, and it seems like this would be a very important time for us to really start repairing and taking care of our cells in all parts of the body. And then Menopause Balance Complex, which Suzanne just ran through some of the wonderful ingredients that are in that, and we're going to tell you a little bit more about the kind of results that people get with that. Steve?
Okay, well then that's the basic program, but many women who are undergoing menopause have hormone imbalances, and that's often what leads to the hot flashes. And as you can see from the little diagram in the upper right-hand corner, it's a pretty significant percentage of the women who are suffering from hormonal imbalances and hot flashes. So if that's you, you start with the basic program. You can see 2 components of the basic program here, the Menopause Balance Complex and the Shaklee soy protein shakes and smoothies, but add 2 additional things to help you really control those hormonal imbalances. One is the GLA complex. And again, those of you who have been around for many years may have heard of something called evening primrose oil. It's been known for years as something that really helps with hot flashes and menopause symptoms, and GLA has those same active ingredients. The vitamin E story is interesting because we tend to think of the ovaries as the only organs that actually produce the estrogen, but it turns out that fat cells can produce estrogen also. But fat cells need vitamin E to be able to produce estrogen. So the vitamin E helps to produce estrogen even when your ovaries stop doing it.
Huh.
Steve is so smart.
I was going to say, I didn't know that.
I didn't
That's
either.
pretty good. This is why we invite the biochemists to join us. Okay, so let me tell you about Becky. Becky, so about a month and a half ago, I'm going to say, um, this product that we started telling you about, Menopause Balancing Complex, went on back order because there was an ingredient in that product that did not meet Shakly's standard. And when you have a product that has multiple ingredients, it just takes one that doesn't meet their standards, and all of the production has to be halted. And immediately, the emails and the internet were filled with desperate women asking who had a backup of Menopause Balance Complex because it's not due back till November 4th. And that's when I started calling people and saying, tell me about your experience. So I called Becky there with her 2 basset hounds, rescued. And Becky said that when she was 35, her mother had had an early hysterectomy, so she never knew exactly when her mother went through menopause. And then she found out that her grandmother had gone through it when she was about in her early 40s. So when Becky was 35, she started noticing what she called was some funny symptoms and figured it probably was perimenopause. So she started getting interested in Shaklee supplements and taking a look at what might be appropriate for perimenopause. So she started on the basics, as we've just reviewed. She used energizing soy protein and the Shaklee 180 soy protein and the Vitalizer daily strips. And then to that, she added GLA that Steve just talked about, gamma-linolenic acid, and this is a precursor of prostaglandins that in turn help regulate hormones and make hormones. And so she started with that, and then she read about Menopause Balance Complex, and she thought that sounded like a good idea, but because she wasn't in menopause, she decided that just taking one a day would be fine. And all of her symptoms stopped just with that simple program of those couple of products right there. She was having a hard time losing weight. She was starting to get a lot of fat accumulating around the middle of her body. She was having night sweats and irregular periods, and she said she felt as good as new and back to her old self in no time. And she said she realized that her body was just slowly starting to diminish its estrogen production, and that was triggering these new symptoms. Well, so she mentioned about Menopause Balance Complex, and I thought it was interesting how she described it as a combination of herbs, not estrogen, because she knew that that was not the direction she wanted to go because of the dangers that Steve outlined earlier. So she said, but it looks like estrogen to the other cells in your body. I thought that was cute. So the cells function as they should with plenty of estrogen. But then Menopause Balance Complex went on back order. So then we found out, she said she ran out, and within a month she started seeing the weight gain return. And she said that she always had it on hand. So at age 46 now, so she's past, when her relatives would have had their normal menopause. She's still regular as ever and still having regular cycles. So she is very grateful. Suzanne, tell us about Lynn Carter.
Okay, Lynn is one of my longtime customers who didn't use a whole lot of products, so I can't say that she was on the Vitalizer. She would use Vitally on occasion, but she's one that does a lot of investigating of things on her own. And when she started feeling the menopause type things that signaled that things were not quite like they used to be, she heard an ad on the radio that promised relief from the mood swings and the hot flashes, which were her big thing, and in addition promised a weight loss of at least 30 pounds. But the thing was, these products could only be used 3 months and no longer. She couldn't remember what was in them, but if you can only use them 3 months, that sounds kind of dangerous. And bottom line is they didn't do anything. So at age 42, she was having severe hot flashes and heavy periods that were lasting 15 days or more. And she decided that she was going to use Stress Relief Complex. And she found that it helped. But then she started losing focus, and that really frightened her, because she is an electrical engineer that has her own nutrition business, and she said I just couldn't be losing focus and still doing my job. So I suggested to her that she might want to try the menopause balancing complex, and she did. And within 2 weeks, she saw a noticeable difference in the hot flashes and the mood swings. Before the menopause balancing complex, she tried the black cohosh, that she found in. She knew black cohosh and evening primrose oil was supposed to be helpful for her situation. And she tried several from the health food stores that had different ratios of the two. And she found that some made her sad and weepy, and just not happy chappy, and others made her feel over the top, way too much. So and they caused problems with her periods. So she had really bad cramps, very bad, which was not normal for her. And she's had none of these symptoms with the menopause balancing complex. So she's really pleased with it. The mood swings have stopped. The hot flashes are going away, and there's only currently now she's only having occasional periods, but when she does, there's no problems. And she says, Suzanne, I only have 4 left. I don't know what's going to happen after that. So I suggested some GLA and B complex.
Right, exactly right. We'll fill in with the other things. The other aspect I just wanted to mention about hormonal shifts and changes that can occur around this time in a woman's life has to do with the adrenal gland. Adrenal exhaustion is really very common in our country. And if you look over some of those symptoms, you'll see that it affects a lot of folks. Difficulty, slow to get up in the morning, never feeling well rested, and fretful sleep, anxiety, nervousness, mild depression, low blood pressure and salt cravings, and struggling to get through the day, and frequent infections and abdominal weight gain, and just stuff. And so I wanted to at least mention this because the one thing that I learned about the endocrine system is that it's all related. All the glands that make the different hormones, the thyroid and the ovaries and the adrenal gland, and when things are out of balance, they affect the other glands as well. And so look at some of these things that affect the adrenal glands. Life issues affect the adrenal glands. They respond to stress. There's a lot of financial stress. There's loss of people we love. In today's world, unwanted unemployment and just insecurity around employment. There's body issues, allergies and infections and medications, all of which have side effects. And then there's just the way we live, smoking and overexertion and not exercising and not relaxing and grabbing and running and just eating any old thing, and then the diet, coffee and caffeine and sugar, and people grab that stuff because they're trying to stimulate something to get them through the day. And what happens is over time it just exhausts those adrenal glands. And so we wanted to tell you about a few products that may help. And so the women on tonight's session voted to have an entire slide devoted to B complex, and overrode the male on the program tonight, because B complex, number one, turns every woman into Mother Teresa, but it is essential for the brain and the nervous system. If you remember nothing else, remember all those symptoms of menopause that were related to your head, to your emotions, to your nervous system, mood swings, irritability, mental confusion, depression, dizziness, trembling, all that stuff. B vitamins helps with that. It's depleted, though, by all this stuff that people tend to eat like every day. Sugar, alcohol, caffeine, refined carbs, medications, stress, in other words, everything, it's always depleting B vitamins. And they're water soluble, so they have to be replaced constantly. They play a role in hormones, PMS and morning sickness and prevention of birth defects and cervical dysplasia. B vitamins play a role with. They help regulate blood sugar, essential for the formation of your red blood cells. It's important, and antibodies. Reduces risk for heart disease and reduces homocysteine levels. There's a lot of really important things that B vitamins do. So that is one I always recommend people take extra of. And so there's the collection for the adrenal exhaustion. The Vitalizer, again, that wonderful beginning place, that daily strip foundation with the 80 nutrients in it. A good healthy breakfast in the morning with one of the protein shakes with the non-genetically modified soy. And then vitamin C. Suzanne, you want to mention what you were telling me about vitamin C?
Stress actually depletes the vitamin C in the adrenal gland, so that's the main reason for, and it's needed for the adrenals to make cortisol, the hormone that does what it does when we're under stress, which is not the best hormone in the world to have.
And when you deplete vitamin C, because of causing the stress response, that's also pretty important for your immune system, so you become vulnerable for that stuff. B vitamins are depleted by stress and all the other stuff I just mentioned. And then there's a product that we probably don't talk about enough called Core Energy, made up of ginseng and an interesting herb called cordyceps, used a lot in the Far East. These are adaptogens. They help normalize glands if they're underactive or overactive, kind of bring them back to a normal state. Professor, anything you want to mention about any of these?
Nope, you're doing great.
Okie dokie. Okay. And so we want to tell you one other story quickly, and that is of one of my customers, Lynn Nelson, told me that she sent me an email and said, I am missing Menopause Balance Complex since it's been on back order. She said she started taking 2 a day, and then she improved so much that she was able to taper down to only needing 2 3 days a week, and then 1 on the other days. She tends to watch her budget, and then she took energizing soy protein or the Shaklee 180 shakes. And then she had just 1 GLA a day, so she doesn't take huge quantities. Vitally Gold. And then at night she takes 4 Osteomatrix before bed. Now, many people, Steve's going to do a slide in a minute about Osteomatrix for bone density, but Osteomatrix, this is the Shaklee calcium product, is wonderful to also help promote sleep, because she said it was a big help with her sleep issues. And then Nutriferon, she takes 2 a day, and she reduced her consumption of refined sugars and carbs. But since the Menopause Balancing Complex has been on back order, she said she has been experiencing real hot flashes for the first time. She said, I've never had a real hot flash until last month, and that's why she realizes that Menopause Balance Complex was the missing link. Steve?
Okay, well, so one of the things that's important to know is that overweight can increase the risk of developing the symptoms associated with menopause, the hot flashes, the hormonal imbalance, and so forth. But also, as you mentioned earlier, it's also can be one of the consequences of menopause. So the Shaklee 180 turnaround kit, the turnaround program, is an ideal program to help people get in control of their weight. Next slide.
Also, Barb, Lynn started on the 180, and she lost 30 pounds after starting with the menopause. So.
Oh, wow. Excellent.
And then there's osteoporosis. That's the other thing that women in this age group really need to be aware of. Of course, women at every age, even men at every age, should be developing the bone density to avoid osteoporosis. But it really starts to become apparent during, once you reach, because estrogen stimulates the laying down of calcium in the bone cells, once you have gone through menopause, then the bone density starts to decrease dramatically. You're really drawing on your reserves, and you want to minimize that loss in bone density as much as you can. because you can see here there are 44 million people in America with low bone density. 1 out of every 2 women is going to fracture a bone during osteoporosis in her lifetime. And when that woman suffers a hip fracture, 20% are going to die within a year, a third are going to end up in a nursing home. Only a third will ever regain their previous quality of life. So this is where you're starting with that basic program, but you're adding the osteomatrix or the chewable CalMag Plus. You're adding the vitamin D3 to make sure you're getting the calcium and the vitamin D you need. And Suzanne, you want to say something about weight-bearing exercise?
Yes. Uh, I thought I was in good shape because I have always done yoga and walked since I was in high school. My mom was very aware of nutrition since I was a little kid, so I have taken calcium supplements and of other kinds until Mom found Shaklee. So I've been taking Shaklee calcium supplements since being a young teenager. So when the gynecologist asked if you ever had a bone density test, I said no. She said, "Do you want to do it?" I said, "Sure." So I walked down there with all the confidence in the world that I was just fine. But the results came back that I had the beginnings of osteopenia. So this was about 14, 15 years ago. The doctor said she wanted me to start on Fosamax. And I said, well, I don't really take drugs. And this was even before they knew that Fosamax caused the jaw to crumble and the femur bone to crack. But she gave me the samples and she gave me the prescription to take home. And instead, I talked to a couple of chiropractors in our Shaklee organization, and they each independent of the other said, get a personal trainer. So I got a personal trainer and I started lifting weights. That was in May. I was to go back in August for the doctor to see how well Fosamax had worked. And she called me back very, very excited to tell me that she'd never seen Fosamax work so well, that I had a 7% increase in bone density in just 3 months. And I said, well, I have news for you. I didn't take Fosamax. I started lifting weights. So lifting weights is the factor that most women don't want to add to taking the calcium. But it's really the missing factor that makes sure that your bone density is strong. And
It's a great story.
Yeah, a year after I had started taking weightlifting, I accidentally pulled a 50-pound bench press off its support and it landed on my extended shin. And I had a big cut, had to have 13 stitches, but my leg didn't break. So it does make a difference.
Yeah, that was next time we don't need to test it, right? So we just wanted to show you a few of the recommendations from the National Institutes of Health. Just good things to keep in mind, in addition to the supplements that we've discussed, is avoid caffeine, alcohol, and spicy foods that can trigger hot flashes. Eat soy foods. We talked about that. Plenty of calcium and vitamin D. We talked about that. And then remember exercise. What Suzanne is talking about is really critical. And Kegel exercises, where you are tensing and relaxing the muscles on the pelvic floor. Very important to do that. And practice slow, deep breathing. Whenever a hot flash is creeping on, try taking 6 breaths a minute. Slow it all down. And try programs like yoga and Tai Chi or meditation to calm your body. Okay, Professor?
Okay, if you'll just click, yes. So, for those women who are just entering the menopause, maybe perimenopause or menopause, you're at a branch point. You can exercise. If you do those relaxation techniques, if you eat right and you supplement, can be much better than that. So your golden years should be just that. So if we just summarize the basic program, the basic menopause program is Vitalizer, the Shaklee 180 Smoothie Mix, Vivix, and the Menopause Balance Complex. That's our core. And if you're suffering with the hormonal imbalances and hot flashes, this is where you're going to want to think about adding the GLA, the vitamin E complex, and B complex. And next slide. If you are suffering from some of the symptoms that Barbara talked about for adrenal exhaustion, now you want to think about the B complex, the Vita C, and the core energy. And if you're concerned, and I quite frankly can't think of any woman in that age range who shouldn't be concerned about your bone density. That's where you're going to want to think about the vitamin D3 and the calcium supplement and the exercise. And Barb, I think that's
There
all
we
right.
go. And with that, it's a wrap. That's right. Back over to you, Joe. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, great job, guys. Very informative, very comprehensive. Do you want the questions?
Sure, go ahead.
Here's Kathy Bond saying that she said, my anxiety was so much worse than the sweats, and menopause balance complex was so effective that I would turn around on my way to work if I forgot it. That's good. What was the percentage of decrease in breast cancer?
It was 8.6% over a 3-year period.
Okay.
As I said, that's the single most important intervention that the medical community has ever made in reducing breast cancer risk. And they did it by stop doing something that they've been doing for years.
Interesting.
Oh, boy.
Mayo Clinic announced that any woman on HRT contraceptives have a 45% greater chance of getting breast cancer.
For every 10 years that she was on it, I think the risk went up by 10% or something. It was. I should really look those statistics up again.
Right. So what you're looking at in that statistic is lifetime risk, and probably they were separating out the women who develop estrogen responsive breast cancer. That's going to be the kind of breast cancer that's going to be most affected by the hormone replacement therapy. So that's looking at lifetime risk. This is looking at incidence of breast cancer, or actually prevalence of breast cancer. So those are sort of different statistics.
Dr. Cheney, I'm so glad we have you here to help us interpret and understand all these studies that come out. It's a very confusing world out there.
Amen.
Would Dr. Cheney repeat what he said about vitamin E, fat cells, and release of estrogen?
So fat cells can actually make estrogen, perhaps a little known fact, but they need vitamin E to be able to do that. So that's why vitamin E is helpful in maintaining some basal estrogen levels. Now, it's not like fat cells can ever replace your ovaries, but they can give you an increased basal level of estrogen, and that's going to help protect some of those important organs. So that's very important. I mean, one of the things we didn't talk about is the heart disease risk, which increases dramatically after menopause, and that's partly due to the effect of estrogen on the liver, which makes cholesterol, and the effect of estrogen on the arterial linings. So those two affect, so there are a number of different effects when we go back to that slide. I'm not saying we go back to the slide. When we think about that slide that Barbara showed you earlier, all of the places in the body where estrogen can be effective.
And we've got plenty of fat, so you can still lose a bunch and still have enough.
Yeah, and the thing is, even if you're not visibly fat, women are, they just naturally have greater fat stores than men, and that's because of the important role that fat cells play in keeping basal estrogen levels on.
Sure. Good.
There's the slide, Steve.
Yes, so if you look at it, so talk about heart and liver is one of the spots there. Estrogen regulates the production of cholesterol, but it doesn't also tell you. They didn't talk about it here, but it also increases. It also decreases, or increases the plasticity of the arteries. So that helps to affect blood pressure, and those two things together. When you lose the plasticity of the arteries, when you increase the production of cholesterol, those two things together significantly increase the risk of heart disease.
Interesting. How do people get a hold of the slides?
They will be archived at betterhealthin31days.com. I'll be sure and send those to Chris there. Somebody asked about vitamin C and B vitamins. causing kidney stones and nerve damage. That's
No.
interesting. All I can tell you is I have been taking gobs of that stuff for a long time. But Steve, you want to comment on any of that?
Well, so both of those are really urban myths that have been around for years. There was and this was probably 10, 15 years ago at least, maybe 20 years ago, there was a biochemist that, he was notoriously anti-supplement, always writing things. So he wrote this theoretical article about vitamin C might be converted to oxalic acid. And if so, it would really increase the risk of kidney stones. Well, that was sort of a legitimate suggestion. So, of course, people went out and did the clinical studies, and they found there was nothing of the sort. It's not converted to oxalic acid in any significant amounts, so there is no increased risk of kidney stones. But these urban myths, once they get started, seem to hang around forever. The B complex is a similar thing. This was a manufacturing problem with a batch of B complex years ago, probably made in China, but who knows, where they had a contaminant that caused neurological damage. And again, it became an urban myth that got repeated over and over again. Now, I will say, if you take extremely high potency of a single B vitamin, B6 would be the biggest example. Very high potency B6 without taking any of the other Bs to balance it, you can get into some problems with nerve damage there as well. But you're talking about mega doses of B6, which most normal people aren't going to be doing.
Which also speaks to the Shaklee philosophy to make products. You'll notice they don't make a vitamin C, they make Vita C complex. They make a Vita E complex. They make the whole complex as much in proportion with the other things how they are found in nature, not isolated and synthesized and crystallized and and concentrated and so forth. Same way, with vitamin C. So very important. Also, Barb asked here about hormone replacement therapy when it's plant-based. I have not seen any research on that. Anything you want to mention, Steve? About is it safer to have hormone replacement therapy from the compounded plant-based?
I would say, there are lots of claims being made, and both the pharmaceutical companies and some of these herbal companies are trying to develop safer alternatives. Often they're trying to do it by changing the balance of hormones that are used in the hormone replacement therapy, or the biomimetic hormones, or all sorts of fancy sounding things. None of these have gone through the weight of clinical trials. Remember, based on limited clinical studies, just a study here and there where people looked at possible harmful consequences, everybody thought that estrogen replacement therapy, as it was practiced, was safe for a period of at least 20 years. So, I would be very skeptical about some of these other ones until we're 20, 30 years down the road, and we really have enough clinical data to know whether they're safe.
Steve, there are several questions coming in around soy and fear of taking soy when you're pregnant because it could affect boys and affect their estrogen level and so on and so forth. We actually are going to be doing a session on soy. Aren't we coming up in October or November?
I think we do. And I will say there is a study that was just published. And actually, this was published more along the lines of athletes, because that's another area. The gym rats, the guys in the gym, almost always want to avoid soy because of these urban myths that it's going to affect their testosterone levels negatively, and it's going to be the feminizing effects because it's a phytoestrogen. And the study looked at that and said absolutely not. There is no effect, and that's why will publish that. I can't tell you exactly when, but in probably one of the upcoming health tips from the professor emails. So if you're not on that healthtipsfromtheprofessor.com, go there, sign up for it. I know it's a long name, but it's easy to remember. Health Tips from the Professor. That'll be coming, actually, the one that comes out tomorrow, so you might want to sign up tonight, is going to talk about soy and breast cancer. And that'll be followed up a few weeks down the road with soy and its effect on male hormones as well, or its lack of effect on male hormones.
That'll be good. I just checked. It's going to be November 11th.
Okay.
Our topic is soy and breast cancer. Yeah, that'll be a good one. And just maybe one or two more. Steve, there are questions about B vitamins. Are they safe to take during pregnancy? My goodness, I really recommend them during pregnancy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, remember you're eating for two. You're creating a lot of cells. You are burning a lot of energy. And the fetus is developing cells. The fetus has a very high metabolic rate. You need those B vitamins. And again, if you're using a natural B vitamin where the B vitamins are in balance, this is a good thing. And we're not talking about mega doses here. We're just talking about getting enough B vitamins. The B vitamins and vitalizer, or if you do take extra B complex, one or two a day. You don't have to mega dose on this stuff. You just want to make sure you got enough.
Especially when anything to do with hormones and emotional flipping, and oh my gosh, B vitamins are wonderful for that. So
also B vitamins are important for rapid cell division, and that's what's happening with the fetus.
Yeah, I sure love them. So I think we covered, there's a lot of questions, but I think we covered the majority of them. We thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you, Professor, and thank you, Suzanne. And we'll see you all next week. And next week, our topic is allergies.